Okay, we're live. So, welcome everyone to another episode of Nansen Unsupervised. This time it is a intern takeover. I've got CMS intern, Fintech Frank's intern, and Delphi intern, and myself, of course. We're going to provide our takes on various topics, including the merge, Bluechip NFTs, and moving towards web-free social media. So, just before we get into it, if you'd like to start using the best crypto and NFT analytics platform, there's links below. You can sign up to Nansen Lite for free, or you can try on Nansen Standard for just $9. Make sure you subscribe, turn notifications on so you don't miss any future episodes. I've got a Nansen PoW user on next week, which is very exciting. So yeah, I'm going to go around. I don't think we're going to introduce you again, CMS intern, because people might know. It's a good point to shill the first episode. So go back and watch that one. But I'll start with Delphi intern, who's your brother. So if you could give an introduction, are you an actual intern? And what do you get up to on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, GM everyone. So I actually am an intern. I'm still in school. I'm going into my junior year at MIT. So I go full-time intern in the summer and winter. And then during school, I kind of do what I can around classes. I actually got my internship through Twitter. Anil tweeted out looking for interns. I DM'd him or I guess Google Meet. But the next day, about 15-minute call, took me on, I think, March 2021. Since then, roles kind of evolved. I started out just doing research. I did some venture stuff over last winter. And now I kind of work on 3 different areas. So I'm on the marketing team. That's mostly just making memes and tweeting and doing notes and stuff. Then I do some business ops. I work on search engine optimization for a website and some other stuff. And then I'm also a little bit on the ventures team doing due diligence and taking calls, mostly working with Avi. He's the goat.
Nice. Fintech Frank's intern. Go ahead. Someone says, well, Casper, who I know, says you look like a true Chad.
True Chad. Thank you, Casper. I appreciate that. Nice to meet everybody. Frank's intern. You can call me Davis as well. Slight docs. So I as well got this through Twitter, through crypto Twitter. CMS intern said yesterday it's kind of the water cooler of the crypto industry. Couldn't agree more. I saw Frank was looking for somebody to come on board and help produce some content for the podcast. So I came on back in March part-time. So basically an intern, 30 hours a week. I've been working with him for the past 3 months, which has been some incredible times in the crypto industry. I think, my 3rd or 4th episode was Do Kwon coming on right before BTC was at 48K in March. And then all the 3 Arrows stuff, Linder stuff. It's been such a blast to be right there in the middle of that, working on all these episodes with everyone at the block. And I actually came on full-time about 3 weeks ago. So no longer an intern, no longer part-time, but forever on crypto Twitter will be Frank's intern.
So Delphi intern is the only actual intern remaining. But intern is a powerful thing in crypto Twitter. So that leads us on to actually CMS intern. Give a brief intro because people might not know. I feel bad otherwise.
Yeah. No, honored to be back. Appreciate the invite, Alex. I joined CMS as a true intern in November 2020. Interned for about 2 months, started the CMS intern handle really just for memes, joking around. Shout out Dan, who runs a CMS holdings account for putting out awesome color and culture and memes into the crypto Twitter space. Interned for about 2 months, was hired on full-time to the ventures team. I've been on the ventures team full-time for about 1.5 years now.
Nice. Okay, so on the topic of all of us being on social media and meme posting and all of this, what we wanted to first talk about is web-free social media. So I am a bit of a noob, so I'm going to be the person who knows nothing here. But Fintech Frank's intern, you're going to lead us on this one, hopefully, and talk about Lens.
Yeah, so we actually we decided to talk about this yesterday before I listened to the episode that dropped this morning. But it was DJ RAC came on and he was talking about how he has 5.5 million followers on SoundCloud, But the problem is he feels like all of those followers are locked in the platform. You know, if SoundCloud were to go offline, he has no way to connect with those people. He has no way to transport that following that he's built up to another platform, anything like that. So that's a big problem with these Web 2 social platforms, you know, including Twitter. Like Twitter is the social graph that connects to all of us, but we're connected through Twitter. You know, we should be able to connect directly with each other. And then the social app should be built on top. We should be able to import our connections to the apps instead of the other way around. So that I think is kind of just a quick way to get at the value proposition of a Web3 social experience, kind of as a jumping off point.
Mm-hmm. I think we've seen like a lot recently as well, like all these people like Keyboard Monkey was banned recently, right? Why was he even banned? Does anyone actually know?
Who knows?
I don't know the exact reason.
Yeah, but like he was banned, and then this would kind of solve that, I guess, of like keeping your profile there. Is that right?
Well, that, and if, you know, potentially he just pissed somebody off. So if you piss somebody off, you know, they could get all the bots to start reporting you, and then there's nothing you can do about it. So it's not a very good system.
Do you have any takes on that, Delphi or CMS Intern?
Yeah. I mean, I'll go. Yeah, I wasn't sure if he was going to speak. So I guess my one take on it is we're kind of linking it to Twitter and like your professional world. It's like, we build up these big followings, and you have people trying to connect with you professionally, but also on an actual like social media level. Like all the people that follow my personal Instagram, my personal Twitter, like all the other mediums, it's probably like a almost circle of a Venn diagram. Like it's all the same people, but they had to manually follow me on each different website. And like, if I was to start a new social media, then I have to track down all those people again. So I think, I don't know, kind of consolidating it and having your social graph built out every time you want to add in a new application, you can almost like, it's like bootstrapping liquidity, but for followers. Like you can just get people right on your accounts right away. So I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah, it seems like something too, right? Like there's a practical use case that Delphi Intern just mentioned, where like, again, like I wanted to, you see all these views on like TikTok, Instagram and stuff. And obviously if your account is mostly memes, those also go well on those platforms. But like a lot of us here just have the Twitter following. It's almost impossible to go back in and bootstrap and go on Instagram. Like I'm pretty sure like I'll follow other CT guys on Instagram and they'll have like 100K plus followers on Twitter. And then you go to their Instagram and it's at like 4K. And it's real people. So it's just like a massive hurdle that you have to jump over if you want to use a different platform. So like the practical use, right? Lens consolidates all that. You have your main following and then there's different apps on top. And then there's kind of like the crypto ethos take on it, right? Which is that freedom of speech is important, and deplatforming is something that can really hurt someone. Again, if you make one person mad, right? If they're in a position of power, you're done for. We've seen that with massive public figures, right? Like obviously Trump started his own social media after he got deplatformed. So like whichever side of the line you stand on, I think freedom of speech, right, is something that this country's kind of built on, right? So having the opportunity to grow your own following and maintain is something that a lot of people stand for. So Lens really makes it possible. And we don't know if they're going to be the winner, right? They definitely seem to have the best product so far, but there's a lot of people building in this space. So like the self-sovereignty over your own social and your own voice is something that's important, right? So I'm hoping to see some innovation there and get like it more built out and get the community larger.
Someone or it's Casper again, actually. It's me being an idiot. He didn't get banned, did he? It was that he got hacked. I remember now. And then someone put like a wallet drainer link on there. I wanted to ask you, actually, all of you. So I spoke about it with CMS Intern before. So Fintech Frank's Intern, were you like into social media before you ended up in this role? Or is this like really freestyle and then you just had to grow it by
That's
learning?
A good question. Good question. I was a hardcore lurker, so not even a reply guy, just straight up lurker until this account, actually. So when they brought me on part-time, it was a pretty open-ended role. They were like, look, we need somebody to write these summaries every episode, but then past that, you know, we need somebody to just come in and create a bit of a presence. So between me and Frank, we came up with the idea for this account and kind of the content that would be coming out. And it's still evolving as we go. So it's been a blast getting into it. But to answer your question, no, this is my first foray into social media.
Okay, Delphi Intern. I should say Delphi, right? I say Delphi.
Yeah, that's correct. It's Delphi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess I never had like a social media role before this, but it's kind of like the Bay and the like you merely adopted the memes. I was born in it. Like I'm a true Zoomer. I was born at like just the right time where like too late to invest in Bitcoin, too early to be on TikTok, but like middle school and high school, like memes, it was almost like self-defense. Like if you're in a group chat, you got to be able to make memes quickly. So I've definitely, I don't know, I've honed my meme prowess over years and I guess found a good use for it on CT.
Funny story too. When I first took my first step into memes for CMS, I did not know. I mean, I followed crypto Twitter, right? Like I understood them and I liked them. I knew nothing about creating memes. Delphi Intern was actually the one who showed me, gave me his initial meme folder, and was like, "This is basically how you create, right? This is how it works." So he was actually the creator behind a lot of the initial memes that led to a meme account. So
you have like a whole folder then of memes. That's what I need to do. I actually don't have that.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen like Vindog is Barstool's meme guy, and there's a great soundbite of him. He's like, "Oh yeah, in a meme war, it's all about the speed. Like I have every folder, I got every meme alphabetized. Like I can make a meme in 2 minutes." And like that's what it really came down to. Because we used to like the first memes we were making was just like Snapchat, like using the scissors to cut faces and putting names on them. And I learned Photoshop like 2 months ago, so it can definitely make some higher quality memes now. I still got to show CMS. I think that's on the schedule today. So,
can I ask you, both of you actually, just thought of it. What do like your family think of like you two both being in this space? Because like when someone asks me what I'm doing, it's impossible to explain what I'm doing. So then, how does it go? Like trying to explain both of your jobs, also to your family, and then also I guess to like your friends outside of crypto. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah. So to the family, right? A lot of it is if numbers going up, right? We look like geniuses, and they're like, "Oh, you both working in the industry. It's it's popping off. Ethereum's the future internet, right? Like, it's something that is great when it's going down. My mom is like, I get sacrificing yourself, but pulling your brother into it too. Like, what are you thinking? So like sentiment kind of follows price, right? Which is a lot of crypto too. But like, I don't know, in general, right? Like obviously Jack is the smarter one out of two of us. So like the fact that he looks into the tech, really understands it, likes it, like we see a future in it. So I don't know, the family side of it, our parents are kind of just like, if you guys trust it, we trust you. So like run with it. The friend side is a little bit easier, right? Because like, I don't know, we're in the Zoomer generation. I barely touch into the Zoomer. But like, so people are like used to trading around crypto and dog coins and like they see the memes about it, right? So that side's not as much. The family it is a funny dynamic though. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you covered family side well. At least for friends, for me, I have my friends from home all think I just like trade magic internet money all day. And they're like, how does any of this work, man? Sometimes I'll explain it and they'll be like, oh, that kind of makes sense. And then at school, I actually probably like last fall, I got a bunch of kids into it. And now a bunch of them started working in crypto and like pivoted from TradFi. So yeah, shout out Golden Tree Intern. And I got a friend working at Meta. So dark side, what he's in.
Nice.
So yeah, there's a lot of good connections there.
How did you get them in?
So honestly, it's more for them. They were just geniuses. They're like some of the best like CS and data science guys I know. And I started teaching them like the fundamentals of crypto probably like last September. And then they kind of dove right in. And by December, they were pretty well versed in how crypto worked, have the technical skills to match it, and then got themselves some jobs. So
Frank's intern asked earlier, I thought it was a good question. Like, how do you manage as well to study and also do crypto? Like, I had my final year of like postgrad, and I was like really getting into crypto at that point. I remember like it was impossible. Like I just did not study as much as I should have because you're so absorbed in this. So like, how do you manage that, especially working in crypto as well?
Yeah, so I guess my freshman year was a little easier because it was like the COVID year. So everything was online, class schedules were super flexible, and it was kind of just if you got your work done on time, you had free time. So I actually started, like I joined the team in March and then worked through like the end of my school year because I just like didn't have that much going on. And then it kind of was a lot last fall. I definitely had to spend a little less time in crypto. And then I think so. I kind of pivoted. And so I play lacrosse at MIT as well. And I've been injured back and forth. I missed my first year because of COVID. And then I broke my collarbone last spring. So I ended up missing 2 seasons. So I kind of called an audible. I'm going to take a 5th year and kind of light load classes so I can work more and then continue playing lacrosse. So I think that'll help the balance for sure. And I'll be able to stay a little more active throughout.
Frank's intern, what does your family think of you working in this space? Is it normal?
My family's pretty on board with it, but in terms of friends, I'm staying with a friend in Rochester, New York at the moment, and this is the first non-crypto friend that I've interacted with probably in the last 5 or 6 months because I've been doing a lot of traveling. And he's a really smart guy. He's a PhD student here, but the conversations I'm having with him are back to like Bitcoin consumes all this energy and has no fundamental use case, like back to square one. And so that's been pretty funny recently, just to realize how pigeonholed I've been over the last 6 months, and then to realize what the average, just your average perspective of this industry is in comparison.
I think like you have to talk to people outside of crypto, otherwise you like just go, you don't go insane, you just lose complete understanding of like what real life is like. I was thinking that the other day, like I was coping, I have to say, I missed that pump over the last kind of week. Like I sold and I was like, okay, I think I've sold a good time here. I missed the pump. And then I'm looking at people, everyone making money. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if you just went and just into like normal life, people are not like constantly making money all the time. And like, we're not all trying to like suddenly all millionaires. So I think it's like really important to just like talk to people. Like sometimes I go to the pub or something, I talk to my friends and try and not talk about crypto, which is difficult. But you're like actually understand what's going on in like normal life. And we had the conversation, I think yesterday, of like all of us talking about CPI prints and FOMC meetings. And sometimes you just have to take a step back and be like, what am I doing? Or just, understand that it's not completely normal. Do any of you have any like opinions on that? Have you felt that same way? CMS intern.
Yeah, I memed it a couple months ago back when we had the initial, I think it was a CPI print earlier in the summer. But it becomes like the biggest event of the month, or at least the biggest one that's scheduled. And you're like, you're growing up through college, you're thinking about like all the high potential, like the things you can do in the future. You have a lot of hopes. And then you come and you work full time and you're like, my whole well-being relies around the CPI print now. It's like, it's ridiculous. But I mean, that's what matters right now. It's like the hottest thing. It's the thing that's driving all of the markets. So yeah, you gotta kind of learn and adapt. And people make jokes about it all the time on Twitter, right? They're like, oh no, everyone's a macro expert, or everyone's about to be like a monkeypox expert, right? But I mean, the fact, like, you have to be in tune with what's going on, because that's what's driving the market, right? So I don't know, it's a lot, especially on the intern side. You can't really take a day off, right? You got to constantly be learning about everything that's relevant. But yeah, sitting around, like, you have the timer set for the CPI, you got DB10K on notifications. Like, I don't think anyone like 1 to 2 years ago thought that would be our position right now. It's just the truth of the matter.
I wonder what their life is like. I thought that before, like Zero
God.
Hedge and that guy that you mentioned there, DB or whatever. Like, what is that life about? Like, they're legends, obviously, because they're like so amazing at what they're doing. But how? I just don't understand how you live like that.
Just like put Band-Aids on the fingertips when you go to bed. Like, they have to be pounding their keyboard all day.
Actually,
it's crazy.
On that topic, like Frank's intern, because obviously you work at like the block. Is that like what it's like? Do you have people that are just like constantly searching for like latest news? Is that something you do as well, to like really be on it?
Absolutely. So we're a remote first company, and that was really refreshing after trying to do a remote job for a company that wasn't. This is so much better because we've got people all around the world, really passionate, plugged into the right Slack channels. So as news comes up, we're trying to be, our motto, the first and final word on digital assets. So we're trying to get it out as fast as possible, but also as accurately as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah,
if I was to chill block, I feel like actually the block is like the first one I always see. I remember like because I had that Justin Sun episode last week when I was like memeing on him doing acquisitions. It was like the block instantly who's on it. So yeah, your company is very good. I think.
Shout out to Tim Copeland in particular. Tim Copeland is a beast with getting the stories out there, and he's also just a great guy. So potential future guest for the episode. Tim's great.
Yeah, definitely. I've spoken to him quite a lot, actually. I'm in a group chat with him. He seems very nice and very on it. So I wanted to talk about next. NFTs is what we're going to do next. And then we'll go on to the merge. So I wanted to discuss it because, and I think it's very good because CMS Intern, you actually bought the punk, right? So you, in my view, at the moment, it seems like there's two Bluechips. Like we've settled on two Bluechips, which might be controversial, and all the penguins now hate me as well because of that. But I think if you're realistic, it looks like Bored Apes and punks are like the two Bluechips, and I think it's been quite surprising how like everything else has kind of tumbled. Especially when you look back last year and we had all that mania, everyone thinks like their NFT is going to change the world, and then they've kind of disappeared. So yeah, what are like your takes on the market? Do you feel like those are the two Bluechips? Do you feel like one actually will come out as a leader? And then maybe that leads on to, do you think punks flip apes? Maybe you're biased on that, CMS Intern, but you go first.
Yeah. So for the record, I do not own the punk yet.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
So I did. I bought all the ETH. My intern Mark, who's probably taking notes right now, pretty much forced me to buy like the 90 ETH down in like the 1400s to get the punk, and then ETH has just been ripping. So I'm like, punks are more expensive now, and we're up. But yeah, I mean, I honestly think a really good analogy for how the NFT market will play is very similar to the actual just like cryptocurrency market, right? Like you have like your Bitcoin and Ethereum. I would say punks are more the Bitcoin, right? There's no real roadmap. They're not like utility built in. They're just like the first and the most well-known, the most famous, and for a long time, highest market cap. Bored Apes would be the Ethereum. I think I like Ethereum versus Bitcoin a little bit more than I like apes versus punks, but like for the sake of the analogy. And then you have a lot of other players, right? And typically throughout each cycle, anything that hasn't been Bitcoin and Ethereum has pretty much gone to zero. But each time there are ones like underdogs that completely blow up, go from zero. And that's like where they outperform Bitcoin and Ethereum for a long time there. And like a couple of them stick around. So like I think like Pudgy Penguins would be something that, shout out Pudgy Penguins, that would stick around. That would be like Solana, or one of the other L1s there. But most of them, right, devs lose interest, the community fades away as price doesn't go up. But yeah, I would say that punks are the Bitcoin of NFTs. So like if you're taking a bet on NFTs being relevant, right? Like there's probably not a crypto industry that's relevant if Bitcoin fades away and goes to zero. I would say the same things with punks, right? Like if NFTs in the metaverse is actually going to be a thing, then punks will stay relevant. So kind of the least risky bet, just a ridiculous upfront cost.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like there's such a big disparity though, if you like want to get into NFTs now, because if there are two Bluechips, then what do you need, like 80, 90 ETH just to actually feel like you're secure with what you're holding, which seems a bit dodgy. But I think to me, it's been surprising how that gap has like occurred. Like the 10 ETH spot was held so strong by like Doodle, Suzuki's and Clonex, and even that's been lost now as well. I think they've suffered a lot from the pump of ETH, obviously. And then maybe, I don't know, like I had this conversation with Alex, our CEO, the other day, like my view on NFTs is that I think a lot of these teams had a lot of like money last year, and they probably felt like the volume would continue, and then they could plan to have this much revenue, and then in the future they'd do all these amazing things like these games and all of this, and then volume completely disappeared. They don't have the money, like there's nothing there. But then I look at some projects, like, I don't know if you know, we probably do, with Doodles. Their CEO now is like the Billboard president. They had like Pharrell on as their advisor, but then they're silent at the moment. So then it feels like, would you invest in Doodles because of that knowledge of those people? But then what are they doing now? Who knows? So I think it's interesting because maybe all these people are just building in silence, but who knows? Delphi Intern, do you have takes on NFTs at the moment?
Yeah, so I think CMS put it pretty well in terms of like the top 2 PFPs. And I think the PFP game is a little bit harder because the whole point of like repping a PFP is you're like, I'm in this community. And then if price is expensive, you also kind of get that like cloud of like, oh, like I have 90 ETH to throw at a CryptoPunk, so I'm going to put it as my picture. I think just like either people with less money don't care as much about that, or it's not financially responsible for them to ape all their money into a profile pic. So I think it's harder to build like a mid-tier PFP community. Like everyone just wants to have the best one. So I see that side of it. But then in terms of other NFTs, I feel like there's a lot, whether it's one built strictly for a game, or even I've always kind of been like a little bit of an art nerd, but like some of the generative art stuff to me is awesome. Like just so many different art blocks collections that like look awesome. And people always like, I don't know, they talk about how like the art market in like physical art market's massive. So I feel like generative art and internet art, like you can have a much larger audience. Like if you're hanging this Picasso in your house, like the only people that are going to see it are people that come to your house. Whereas if you have like the coolest Fidenza, you can put it up in some online gallery and everyone can see that you own this art. So I think some of that stuff, it might not be as usable as like a PFP, but in terms of actual like artistic value, it might be a little better than like a pixelated smiley face with a cowboy hat and 3D glasses. But like I still think there definitely could be room for like a more kind of mid-tier PFP. I just think the staying power is a little bit harder there because there's not as much of like an in-group and as much money supporting it at the same time. So
And
Frank's
just
oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say one thought to build is that it takes like the reason that there's an art market, right? Like people very much appreciate it. It's scarce and they love to show it off, right? Like there's rarely art collectors that are buying art without the intent to show it off. So it's just the ability to show off digital art is just like infinitely more scalable, right? You can show 100 people your Picasso, but you can, if you're famous, you can show 10 million people your punk or 10 million people your high quality Fidenza. So the scalability is just crazy there.
Yeah, Frank's Intern, what's your take on NFTs? I know you're not super into NFTs, right?
Yeah, well, not super into NFTs. I do have my Wazi profile picture. I minted that last year in August, and I probably will never change it. Honestly, just something about the eyes. It connects with me. That's mine. But in general, I'm kind of bearish on PFP NFTs for sure. I think the most interesting use case for NFTs are to unlock kind of these higher, more philosophical things we talk about with Web3, like owning your own data and your own social graph and stuff like that. NFTs are going to be the technology that makes all of that possible. Like Lens, for example, when you sign up for your profile, you're minting an NFT. That's your main profile. That controls everything from there. So I'm much more interested in that aspect of NFTs and the ability for them to kind of unlock this stuff that we talk about in terms of Web3 and how it's going to change the world. Not as big on the PFPs myself, but if you're about it, then knock yourself out.
No, I think that's fair enough. And I think at the moment, like I've had consideration of like, is there even a gap, do you think, for like new PFPs? Because maybe everyone always feels like this, but sometimes I'm looking around like there's endless amounts. What is there now that will come in and like disrupt in terms of just aesthetically, I guess? And then I think there needs to be innovation, but like even I'm like struggling to think what it could be. So everyone initially, like you could basically copy paste everyone's roadmap last year of just like games, merch. Yeah, that's it. Go ahead, Frank.
We have limited ways to express these PFPs at the moment. So they're pretty
Yeah.
much just static pictures. I think once we see more of these metaverse platforms built up, particularly open metaverse platforms like Webaverse, and you can buy a PF or buy an NFT and then suddenly walk around as that NFT and interact with people, it'll be a bit more visceral. I think they might have a bit more staying power once these metaverses are up and running.
Can we talk about that actually? So, Webaverse, not to shill it, we're not like sponsored by Webaverse, but I am very like interested in it. How does it actually work then? So you're saying that you could like present in front of people, so like you could do this cool in the metaverse, but how would that actually work?
Yeah, so Loom connected me with the dev behind Webaverse, and I was having a chat with them, and they're kind of trying to build the diametric opposite of what Facebook is doing with Meta. So they're trying to have a closed system, high fees. Webaverse is trying to build kind of a bare bones platform that anything can connect to on top of. They're trying to develop like an open file format, essentially, that everybody can develop. It's kind of like a shared, just open source from the ground up, essentially.
But how does that like translate? So are you saying like you walk around with your, like, let's say I'm my penguin, so I'm just walking around with my penguin. But then how does that different from like a game? That's what I don't understand. Maybe you don't know, but that's like my question with these things. How is that different from like Club Penguin?
So the way I understand it is they're trying to build the space, build the framework, and then have other people come in and use that space, say, okay, you built this space with this functionality. Now, how can we use that either to have a meeting, to play poker, to have a DJ set, whatever it may be. They're just trying to provide that kind of functionality to connect people.
Okay. Do any of you, because I think you bring up like an interesting topic, like see any like clear future cases for NFTs other than just like what we've got at the moment? Like, are you bullish on anything related to NFTs? Yeah.
Unironically, music NFTs. I think there's a lot of growth, or like room for growth there, and like I think a lot of big artists are kind of coming around to it and seeing the potential. One of my favorite examples is that like the biggest concert of all time was the Fortnite Travis Scott concert.
Oh yeah.
So in that kind of idea where like everyone, you're sitting there in like a Fortnite skin, which very easily could be like your NFT avatar, PFP, or whatever you want. Like everyone kind of felt connected, like they were at a Travis Scott concert. Like all my friends are sending Snapchats like, oh, this is crazy, like Travis is killing it. And like you didn't even have to go there physically. There weren't expensive tickets. So I think there's definitely room for whether it's partial ownership in a song or like democratizing streaming or using it for like membership to concerts. Like if you own whoever's NFT, then you can go to any of their virtual concerts forever. I think that's a pretty cool idea. I think one, like we've all seen like the charts about how like Spotify doesn't pay artists very well, and I don't know, everyone knows about like labels and everything taking money. So I think it can provide a lot more freedom and like flexibility for artists to create art how they want and like disperse it on what medium they want, and then actually collect the revenue and the royalties that they deserve for creating it.
To build on the Travis Scott concert as well, like I think that is the single like biggest show of traction for where all this stuff can go, right? Like Travis Scott he released a new song with Kid Cudi at that concert, and I was reading, it was like within the week or something, it was like the #1 song in the world, like by streams or something like that. So like if you think artists are seeing that and they're not paying attention to this space, like it's just an infinite scalable, or not infinitely, right? There's a lot of hard computation stuff that goes behind it, right? But the scalability and reach that you can get with like dropping content in this virtual world, and then if you open it up and can get royalties or profit off of your taste in music, like that market is huge, right? Like I remember being like 10 years old, listening to music on YouTube, and like everyone loves to think it, right? But you find an artist, you're like, this guy's going to be huge, right? Like I wish that I could like be able to profit off of knowing about him early. Like there are a ton of people who enjoy music that take that. So like music NFTs could absolutely run that path. And like I think you see traction around that.
I think that's a really interesting point. Like when you find an artist early and you feel like you could somehow like benefit from that. Like if you, as you mentioned, Delphi Intern, like if you became like a member for them, like you paid for whatever, some NFT to then get some access to stuff. And then in the future, when they get bigger, it could be worth a lot, I guess. What do you think, as you bring it up, is like the thing putting these people off though? So like to me, I could see this working, but there's no one coming in big enough to like really push it forward. So like if you had like Drake or something come in and make an NFT, I feel like it would be like a domino effect. But what is stopping that at the moment? Do you feel like it is the perception of NFTs? Like for instance, I was supposed to like talk about these for an art company about NFTs, and they mentioned to me how there's still this perception, and they can't seem to get over it, of like people hating NFTs because of the environment. So maybe that's like a much stronger narrative still going on than we think. So yeah, so like, what is your take on artists not really getting into the space?
Yeah, I mean, some of the like we've touched kind of the top, right? It hasn't hit that level, but like Eminem has a Bored Ape, right? Like Justin Bieber has a Bored Ape and a bunch of NFTs. Like these, it's on their radar 1,000,000%. There is kind of this entire narrative around crypto that it's a gigantic scam and Ponzi scheme. That definitely holds artists back, right? Their entire career relies around reputation and people liking them, and like that's how they grow and that's how they make money. So it really just is like public perception, I think, that holds a decent amount of people back in the space. But then again, like this cycle, like Justin Bieber's like has to be the most famous musician, at least of this generation, right? Like everyone knows him. And he was dabbling. He was posting on his Instagram, like just bought 3 of these NFTs. Like these guys are interested, and if they can make money on it, like the Spotify example, right? Like these guys get pennies on the dollar for their work. If there's a way to get around that and that they can go straight from creator to consumer, it's huge. We just need a little bit of narrative shift away from like Dogecoin is a scam and like send everything to $1 and we'll all be billionaires. And I think that happens. It just comes with time, right? It's just a lot of iterations in the space. But like there is, for all the noise that hops around in crypto, there is signal and like people are paying attention. So I do think it's a matter of time. I do think it will happen just because the incentives are so much more pure.
Someone says in the chat, they go, it might have something to do with them being gifted the NFTs for free. Surely you're not all that dense. But I feel like actually that could be true for sure. And like, I'm sure some NFTs just get gifted. But if you think about it, like these artists, they love like these chains and whatever that basically lose their value as soon as they buy them. Like, why are you buying a diamond chain of like some whatever, you know? It's the same thing. Like everyone just wants to flex on each other. If artists know that like a Bored Ape has that same power of like whatever, some diamond chain, but actually you can show to everyone instead of just like the people you see physically in life. So I think sure, like some people might have been gifted them for free, but I think there's so much like power behind these in terms of like flexing them in front of people. So I kind of cut that off a bit. But Delphi Intern, what do you think is like keeping people out of music NFTs?
Yeah, so honestly, I think the artists just kind of know the mainstream social perception of it, and they understand that if they were to just launch an NFT out of nowhere, they might like alienate half their fan base because everyone thinks they're like boiling the oceans and burning the rainforests and stuff. So I think one, it might be a timing issue, and they're waiting for either that perception to change or for kind of more info and data to come out and show that like these things aren't just mass energy wasters. There's actually like a lot of benefits. And I think it's also that if they're gonna go for that type of launch, they want to do it right? Like you don't want to just quickly throw together a Snoop Dogg PFP collection and then everyone's like, oh, Snoop Dogg's kind of lame now. Like, look at this like crappy NFT. So I think they're definitely like putting a lot of thought in it, the ones that are working on it, and trying to provide like not just a picture or like some access to a song, but really like an NFT that provides like utility to all parts of like the art that this artist has to offer. So I think it's more just timing and trying to do it right, and like maybe let mainstream perception shift a little more to be accepting of NFTs before they like just jump right off into it. But I think once the first big people do it, there will be a lot to follow soon after.
Yeah, like Jay-Z and stuff has a pump, right? I don't know if it's like it's like an honorary one. But yeah, I feel like that's quite a big moment. But it still needs like one artist to come in and really make something kind of innovative with it. I think because we're going to run out of time, let's talk about the merge, because also the merge relates to NFTs in terms of like proof of work era NFTs versus like proof of stake NFTs. This is not my strong field, so I'm going to have to hope that all of you know more about the merge than me. So firstly, if we start off, Frank's Intern, what is your take on the merge? Are you really bullish on ETH? Do you feel like the merge is just a narrative that makes it bullish on ETH? Was the merge actually like result in ETH going up?
Yeah, so a bit of a counter opinion here for me. I'm not particularly bullish. I think price action will go up into the merge, but I don't have as positive an opinion about the long-term future of how this will impact the chain. Like it'll be good for it. It'll definitely lower energy consumption and all of that stuff. But I do feel like, it's definitely the narrative that's being pumped right now is ETH merge is what we're trading. So we'll see how that wraps up later this year. I personally, I like the value proposition of Bitcoin. That kind of philosophically is what drew me into the crypto space. 2 years ago was really kind of learning how that fits into society. That's my personal take on it.
Do you feel like though, because I feel like that's a lot, and including me, I feel like we're all bullish into the merge, and then there's all this like consensus that okay, you need to sell when the merge happens. Like it's going to be the sell the news. But if we're all going to do that, obviously it's not going to work. So like, what is your take, CMS Intern, on like this journey up to the merge? Maybe the pump that we've got now, and then the outcome after it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the pump, right, it is narrative. Definitely agree with Frank's Intern there. Like people see the merge, they're like, all right, we finally have an event that's happening in crypto. It looks like, I guess the NASDAQ is out of a recession fully. Like people are looking to put on some risk, and like ETH is just easy trade right now. I don't think anyone knows how it will play out, over the next 6 months. But I mean, my take would be, right, like it pumps into the merge. People are assuming they're going to sell. So I would bet that happens even a couple weeks before the merge, as a hedge against the risk if anything goes wrong, and just to like beat the people who are going to sell right after. But like, you also have to look at what happens to the tokenomics, right? Like ETH goes from a proof of work protocol into proof of stake. And with like burning, like there is this triple halving that's going to happen. So like natural sell pressure every day is going to get demolished, right? Like it's the ultrasound meme, but like that's a very real factor, right? Like there aren't going to be miners dumping tokens every day in order to get profit and like get actual US dollars out of their work. So like gun to head, I would say like we pump into it maybe right before or after we'll get like a little sell off, but like long term, it's super bullish for the price action of ETH is my take on it.
Delphi Intern, what's yours?
Yeah, so I kind of think it's just like the bell curve meme, like both left and right side are just like, yeah, merge good. And then everyone in the middle is like, no, it's going to zero. Like, come on, they're going to ruin it. Like proof work chain is going to take all the liquidity. Like that doesn't even like make sense at this point because the stable coins chose proof of stake. So I think a lot of the fun of it like going wrong has kind of been like proven to be false in the last week or two. And that like, I don't know, like proof of work chain will probably exist for a little bit. And then everything eventually is like going to zero because there's no off ramps. And I know we all joke about like being in it for the tech, but like this actually makes the tech significantly better. So I think like really short term, probably up, medium term, who knows, maybe it chops, but like long term, like this is definitely a good thing for ETH. And I think, I don't know, it's also like we have a weird macro backdrop to throw in like the biggest event in crypto ever. So like really, I don't know, I'm an intern. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think long term it's probably good.
Yeah. And you mentioned, so like there's this view of like forking and then having like a proof of work chain. How sustainable do you actually think that is? Because who's going to build on it? So I think we were like talking about it yesterday. So for Ethereum Classic, like there's nothing, I don't think, built on it. So there's probably a reason for that. And then also, if you have the proof of work chain, like correct me if I'm wrong, but you're basically just going to have that sell pressure, right, from miners, and then you rely then on having like equal buy pressure for it not to basically just go down, down, down the whole time. So do you think there is actually going to be like people behind, like a community behind this, or is it just kind of miners? And yeah, what is the outcome of that? Does it just seem like another narrative that everyone is just talking about at the moment because it's something to talk about? Or do you feel like there's a genuine passion for this fork? Frank's Intern, if you start us off.
Yeah, I wish I would have been around back when this was going on with Bitcoin to see how we could compare and contrast these two. I personally have a hard time believing that this proof of work ETH fork is going to be sustainable for more than a couple months after this. I don't see any developers truly committed coming out saying that that's the one they're going to build on. And I think ultimately everything's going to follow the developers.
Yeah. CMS Intern.
Yeah, I would say if the main thing that drives adoption and development, right, is going to be price action, that means you're going to need a market for ETH proof of work token, which means you're going to need someone who's willing to buy at a certain price. So I think, yeah, outside of like the chop of the first few months of people just trying to make a quick profit, like, again, to speak on the Bitcoin thing, right? Like Bitcoin Cash, that was a massive war that went on. There were huge players backing Bitcoin Cash. Like Roger Ver at the time was like one of the largest names in all of crypto, right? He was like Bitcoin Jesus, the first investor in a ton of different companies in the space. He was backing this thing. There were a bunch of people that believed it, right? They wanted true peer-to-peer cash. Bitcoin, the way it stands, couldn't handle that. So like there was a real movement behind it. So there were buyers, right? And so then Bitcoin Cash has market value. People can speculate on it. I don't think there's been anyone with like any real knowledge of the space or say on it that are behind the proof of work, right? I think it's just something that, like, if you're early to an edge case of crypto, that's where like you can do incredibly well in terms of returns, right? So a byproduct of that happening so often is that people are always looking for these crazy fringe cases and being like, how is this going to trade? How's it going to work? So I think the proof of work, like everyone talking about it, is really just one thing where they're like, this is probably going to be a chain, right? There's going to be miners that aren't just going to shut off the rigs. They'll probably mine the proof of work chain. So then they're like, how does this all trade, right? So then everyone gets all bulled up, or not bulled up, but like everyone starts thinking about it. How can I trade this? How can I profit? But like, I don't know. In my mind, there's like pretty high conviction. It's just a nothing burger. I would love if it wasn't, right? Because then all of us get free dividends on any of the ETH that we hold, or any other assets on ETH-L1. But like, I don't see any actual traction behind it in that. So
yeah, I think like you just mentioned, actually, it seems to me like it's just something people are thinking about. How can I trade it? Which is exactly like we said. They're not thinking like this is a really good product, whether like sustainable. It's just how can I trade it, which is probably, at a guess, is like probably pump initially and then die a slow death as like people get bored of the narrative and then move on. Watch me be completely wrong there and be clipped, and it's like world changing. Also, I want to ask, which are probably within asking on your opinion, Delphi Intern, what does anyone understand how this differs anyway? So like ETHW, if it exists, compared to Ethereum Classic, what is that difference?
I honestly have no idea. I don't know why. I don't know why you would choose the new forked ETH over Ethereum Classic. I guess because like all the stuff is currently built on it, so it would be forked. But if no one's going to use it, it doesn't really last. I don't know. I think like miners will probably try to make ETH proof work happen for a bit because they've invested in the rigs and want to squeeze out like as much money off their investment as they can. But at that point, like hasn't even like Vitalik endorsed Ethereum Classic as like, oh, it's a perfectly fine proof of work chain. So like, I don't know, if someone's like a diehard ETH proof of work, I feel like you'd probably go to Classic over the forked chain, especially like we said, there aren't really on ramps and off ramps for proof of work. Like no one's giving you the option to trade it. It's just like money locked in this forked ETH world. So I don't know. I kind of think that it'll be supported by miners for a bit and they'll cash out what they can, but like I think it kind of comes back to that like CT echo chamber idea where like everyone started talking about it and then it snowballed and everyone's like, oh, this might actually happen. How do I trade it? And it kind of just like perpetuates the narrative. Like I've had so many different people be like, oh, what do you think about like longing spot ETH and shorting perps in case it goes down? But then I still get the airdrop. And I'm like, it's what a lot of people are saying, man. Like maybe it's the play. I don't really know. I'm just going to hold my ETH.
I think last question on like this merge. It's probably a short one because I don't know if there's that much to say on it. But like, there's this view of is there going to be values for NFTs, like more value for NFTs that came from like the proof of work era versus proof of stake era. To me, that sounds like a load of rubbish. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. But again, I could be wrong. Yeah, what do you think? Frank's Intern.
I mean, look, we do have this kind of ADBC thing that seems a little arbitrary. So maybe that'll be the NFT equivalent. I don't know.
CMS Intern, will your punk be worth a load more money?
Yeah. I don't know. Like there is a case to be made like for apes and punks. I don't know the other ones. I would guess punks, right, would be the obvious example here, where like you own it, and then obviously once ETH goes proof of stake, there'll be the proof of work chain, and like the NFT will exist there the same way that everything that exists on ETH right now is going to exist on this chain. I mean, if at risk of getting canceled by everyone who cares about crypto and understands the community, like you could probably go in with a bunch of basically free proof of work ETH and buy a punk off someone who didn't delist it. Like you almost certainly get canceled for it, but like you could trade it around.
Yeah, Delphi Intern, what do you think about this? Is it a stupid narrative?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't think the chain's gonna hold value, I don't think the NFTs will. But I mean, if floor drops, like I'm definitely spending my imaginary ETH on a real punk that turned fake, because like I don't know, that's kind of like a meta meme. Like if I can own a crypto punk on Ethereum and it's technically legit, but I got it for free, like I'm in. I'll take my free punk. That'd be sweet. So I don't know. I don't think they're gonna have any real value, but there's definitely gonna be people buying them with fake value.
Okay. So I think because we've got 10 minutes left, I think one last topic that we wanted to talk about was, so recently it seems like every other day something gets exploited or hacked or whatever. So I wanted to talk about how far off, like, do you think we are from being safe for normies? And I think that relates also just to like what's happened this year in terms of staking and everything, like the UST stuff. So do you feel like we're still years off? Like, let's say trying to get your grandparents in, like, dream on. In my opinion, like, it's just not going to happen. But then does that even matter? So I had a similar question last week of like, do we need to be completely taking over like traditional finance, or is that a much longer term view? Or do you feel like we just work alongside it anyway? So do we need to be like extremely safe and all of this, or is the kind of innovation of it and the fun of it, I guess, in a really weird way, is that everything is kind of on edge? Frank's Intern, what do you think?
Well, first of all, my grandfather is into crypto. I got him into it. I set him up with a Coinbase account. He's been a day trader his whole life, so he's integrated that into his strategy, and he got around it pretty well, actually. So using him as an example, once I got him set up with everything, he totally gets the principle of buying and selling the assets and all of that. It's just kind of that initial custody, what's a wallet, that type of stuff is, I think, where a lot of the friction comes in. And to answer your question, to get the normies on board, we have to come up with better custody UX experiences. Like that's something we hear consistently on the scoop. I'd say once a week, like somebody's like, it's going to be the UX improvements that really bring in the next wave of people. And I couldn't agree more with that. The average person shouldn't have to see their seed phrase. I think that's it's too technical. It's unnecessary, too much risk involved with them maintaining that. I think we can come up with better custody solutions, and a lot of that will start to happen once we develop decentralized identity protocols. I think that's kind of what's holding us back at the moment.
Okay, nice. CMS Intern, what do you think?
Yeah, just like to take a second and shout out the Solana phone. No, but like for real, like that is an example of pushing, like it will be a hardware wallet where like you can't really get hacked and everyone knows how to use a phone, right? You're not gonna have to deal with all the kind of the tricky UX stuff that we deal with when we trade around. Yeah, I mean, I think innovation is coming there. Like people obviously see it as the main pain point. There's a gigantic pie in the sky for whoever can win that or at least get a part of it. So like the incentive is there. So people are building, working on it. Again, I think it's just a matter of time. In terms of like the hacks and stuff, like pretty much, well, with some exceptions, but like generally on the spectrum of stuff getting hacked and rugged, like the farther out you go into the edge cases of crypto, the more likely there is to be risk and exploits. So for example, right, with the Nomad bridge last week, like the only people who were really getting smoked there were people who were like bridging their ETH over to say like Moonbeam or Evmos to go and farm. Like people who are doing that generally have an understanding of crypto. They kind of know what's going on. Like your average user there is very well versed in like things crypto. So like the people who are playing with these risky things that are getting hacked tend to have a bit more understanding of crypto in general. Like my parents who just own like Bitcoin and Ethereum on a sex, like they're not getting hacked. It's like really the people who are really trying to play on the edge cases and like milk out the potential and profit within crypto. But yeah, I mean, it's a very real thing. It's really hard tech to build. I think iteration, like I can't remember where the quote came from, but like someone says like a master in one field is someone who has made all of the possible mistakes within that field. So I think if you look at crypto as a whole, crypto will become safer and become like mastered once all these mistakes have been made, right? Because then we're aware of them, we understand the exploits. But yeah, just completely agree with Frank's intern. It's gonna be something that is a UX build that has the security features of like a hardware wallet. Yeah, that's kind of my general take on the risk and exploits that have been going on.
Delphi Intern, like because you're at college as well, when you try to explain to someone like what they need to do to get into crypto, do you just find that like once you mention, I don't know, once you start talking about a MetaMask or like a seed phrase, are they like they're out, like they're not interested anymore, or they're just not listening? So do you feel like that's also an element of it? Like there's too much to keep your stuff secure?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had a lot of people like ask me to help set them up. They're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And like most people get either a Coinbase or an FTX set up and stop there, but they're fine with that because they understand like the value prop of holding like Bitcoin, ETH, or like whatever like their favorite like alt L1 is off, like the little that they understand. And that's fine because I think the core like finance primitives that are going to be built out on those chains are stuff they'll eventually be using. And just investing in like the platform itself is, I feel like it's a lot easier to get into than being like, oh, I like this L2 DeFi protocol because it has really good tokenomics. It's a lot easier to be like, oh, Ethereum is monetized internet layer. So I think that side of it, like the UI and UX part of it's definitely not easy to get into. I've even had times where like some of my friends that got a little more into it and have MetaMask and stuff are like bridging between chains and asking me like, yo, like what do I have to put in for this parameter and all this stuff? And I'm like, I just Google it every time, man. Like I'm not sending my money into the void. Like I Google it, like double copy, paste, check, like the whole shebang. So it's definitely like there's a little, it's nice being in your own bank, but there's also a lot of responsibility with it. And I think if you want to feel responsible, you can't go too far out on the risk curve in that, because once you stop understanding it, you like, I don't know, you'll lose sleep over it. You worry like, oh, am I going to wake up and my phantom's drained? So I think there's definitely a side of it where like it's a little too hard to interact with right now, quite there yet. But I also love the examples of like during like the whole 3AC debacle, like the lenders that did best were the DeFi lenders. And I think that really speaks to the strength of DeFi, where it's not necessarily deterministic, but it's programmed, and like you can't really break the rules, where if you're taking a loan from an actual human being, you can just like ghost them, and then what happens? Like you got to create find 3AC DAO. No one really knows. So I think I don't know. I think once we clean it up a bit, and like I like the like hint towards the Solana phone, but like if we can make it easier to use and just give access to like the core DeFi primitives. And I also think something like Venmo, in my eyes, could like very easily be crypto with stables and without like 15% fee to draw it to your bank account. Like I think there's a lot of simple use cases that crypto could really benefit for. And it's also that most people, in terms of managing their personal finances, don't go like super deep down the rabbit hole and try to buy the next alt L1. Like they just want like the core stuff that's going to work and like help them make a little bit more money on their money. So I think like once we clean all that up and really like make it easy to use, make sure it works well, I think that can really help stuff take off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like as a lot of people have said before, like most of the time actually, especially if you're like a casual investor, you're probably better off just leaving it on centralized exchanges anyway. Because actually most of the time, like the risk comes when you have to manage it yourself. Like this idea of like being bankless, to me, is what I liked about crypto anyway. But to be bankless, you have to have a lot of responsibility, and like you have to be kind of smart, which some people maybe aren't. But you don't. It's not even like their fault sometimes. So for instance, that recent one with the Solana wallet or whatever, where everyone was just getting like drained. Like I felt so bad for those people, because you probably felt like you were doing the right thing, putting your stuff in a wallet, and then ended up still getting your stuff taken, which is not a good thing. But a good lesson to get a hard wallet. Anyone listening, because like then you actually could have stopped that, because you wouldn't have been able to transact. But yeah, I think we're probably still a while off, like us being safe for normies. But I'm very happy that your granddad is into crypto. I could not. That would not be happening with mine. But yeah, I think we have run out of time. You mentioned, by the way, about stables. I'd love to talk about stables at some point, like how we should be using them more. And like the point about Venmo is really good. So that's a good idea. I'm going to note that down. But anyway, thank you all for joining. Thanks all three of you. I really, really liked it. It's nice to get perspectives from all of us, even if they might be wrong. Thank you everyone for joining as well, who has listened and put any messages in the chat. Your intern is here, CMS intern Mark's always here. Hopefully he's got some notes ready. He's put a salute emoji. And subscribe. Hopefully we'll see you next week, and for all the future episodes as well. So yes, thank you everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.